artist to art. That's what we're at. I'm excited today. We've got Sergio Gomez. I'm a fan, so I just want to bring you all into this. So here we go. Artist art. Welcome. Hey,
Hey,
how you doing?
let's go, man. How are you?
I'm well. It's good to see you on the other end. I always see your videos, and I'm excited to be able to talk to you.
That's fun, man. Thank you so much for the invite. I think it's gonna be a fun chat. So likewise, you're doing a great thing. So good to be here.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So I just want to share with people like what you're up to, what you've been doing this for a while, like a long while.
Yeah, a bit, a little bit. So, well, I mean, depends which part, right? But I mean, the art thing, I've always, like probably most artists, just always liked it, always wanted to do that. Eventually, that grew into something else, which became also I loved education. So that's kind of part of what I love to do in social media, educate and help artists do. And also had a passion and love for gallery management. So I opened my own gallery in 2004. It's been running since then, and I love curating. So I'm also a curator here for an art center in Chicago. So that's how my day goes by. A little bit of different things. My studio's over there. Here's my video kind of set up for all the stuff, and yeah, and the gallery is a few miles away.
Wow. How do you balance all of that? Like you've got so much going on. Like I just love everything that you're doing and you're about the paint. I mean, for everybody who's new coming on, like you're managing all this back and forth between the painting and making these videos that are so inspirational that give so much information to artists all over. I've seen your stuff on YouTube. I just like come across it on Instagram. Like,
Yeah.
how do you make the time for all of it?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think most of it kind of trying to organize life in a way that I can do those things. For example, my studio is there, so I can work on a painting while something is dry and say, "Hey, I'm gonna do a quick video." So I can just turn the lights on. I don't have to do a 30-minute setup. So allowing to do those things, my laptop, I can manage all of my projects and sales and things. Which of course now because of the pandemic, all in my gallery, all the art sales are coming through online. So that's actually easier, right, than running to the gallery. So it's just kind of organizing the day so that different things happen different days. And I have a pretty good calendar, on my schedule. So I know like, okay, today I need to do content for Wednesday and Thursday, and then tomorrow might be constant content for, Friday and Saturday, and try to keep one step ahead as much as I can. But, at the end of the day, also it's like, I'm not looking to make it perfect. Just want to show up, and be there, and that's just what people want.
Yeah, it's so amazing that you show up and you're there and you provide all of this thing. What's one of the most important things that you've felt like you've discovered recently that you think that artists should know about, that
Well,
they should be aware of?
that's a great question, and I think it happened through the pandemic. More than anything through the pandemic. Whereas, social media was important before the pandemic, and connecting with others was important, before social media. I mean, before the pandemic through social media. Now, because of the pandemic, this thing that you and I are doing right now, it's a result of now everybody knowing how to use the tools. Everybody has done a Zoom or many Zooms now. Even my dad, 86-year-old, he is doing Zooms. So, it's kind of not being afraid of the technology and the opportunities that it gives us. And for any artists out there who has been on the fence of, I'm doing this, but I'm not really enjoying it, think of it as not as a marketing piece, but rather as a way to connect with people. And I think when you look at it in terms of, I want to connect with Aaron, I want to connect with Mary, I want to connect with Carl, then that connection has a name. And when you connect with one, then you will connect with many.
That's so beautiful. And how do you find these like connections blossoming in your own life?
Well, I think it happened organically, just kind of like through Instagram. Like before this episode, I was recording one of my episodes of Breakfast with Sergio with an artist in Miami. She's a violinist, and every Thursday she does a live session on Instagram. So We know each other from Chicago. She moved to Miami, and so we just reconnected and just just that reach out, right? Today I posted a video from an artist in Mexico that I had never met, but we connected through, again, just sending a message, and saw something interesting, and we just started chatting, and one thing led to another, and of course, being willing to reply to every person who sends you a message, and taking the time to make the connection at the end of the day, because it could be time consuming, right? I think that's for most artists, that's the thing, like, oh, Sergio, it's so time consuming, and sure, it's time consuming. Nobody said it was not supposed to be. It is time consuming. You can automate posts, but connections, you cannot automate connections. Connections have to be done, one person at a time.
That's beautiful. So what are some ways that you feel like artists could make more connections, that they can go out and connect with each other? Or like, who do you think they should be connecting with? And how do you feel like are some of the best ways that they could go about doing this?
Yeah, I love that question. I think we all can look at, again, our social media, first creating our own community, right? Creating a community around the thing that we love to do, which is our art. So by how we create community, by telling our stories, by sharing what's happening in our career, using Instagram stories, to tell our stories. I think that's what people love about that, and being honest and truth about those things. That's how you want first to make a little community around yourself, and don't be afraid or upset if other artists are following you, or are the ones who are commenting on your posts. Oh, I want to find the art collectors, not the artists, right? But here's the thing, every time an artist makes a comment or engages with me, well, that post will have a better life and a better chance to get to maybe somebody who will not know me, or who may be introducing to my work because of that. So, being willing to accept everyone that comes to your community. And then who do we want to connect to? I think with other artists, with people that love art, groups that may be interested in the same things that you are interested. For example, yesterday I was chatting with an artist who, his new body of work is about a specific subject. So I'm like, why don't you just go and find a Facebook group find other people who like that stuff, and then just show up. Don't show up and start selling them, your art, but just show up and be part of that community. And when they get to know you there, and, hey, by the way, this is my art. It's also inspired by this thing, right? So the community is always first, at least in my experience. That's how I like to think of it.
That's so beautiful. So you talk a lot about community and building community around the work, building community. Could you explore a little bit about how you've started to, you have all of these maybe disparate connections. How do you start to bring them together to connect? Like, what are those elements of community, and how is that community and art interrelated?
Yeah, I love that question. I think it's the showing up. First step is showing up. You cannot build community if you're not willing to show up, right? You gotta first show up, so that when you show up, you start making that connection, right? I started watching also your sessions, your videos, and you've been watching some of mine. So it's kind of fun, right? Maybe people cannot be there in the live right now with us, but maybe they will watch it in an hour or later when it goes to IGTV and things like that, right? So that's the fun part. Showing up first is, I think, first step in making community, so that people recognize you as being part of their community. And there's no borders to that community that you can build, and it's organic. You cannot push anyone to, or force them to be part of your community if they don't want to, right? And I think that's a beautiful thing about that too, that if you don't like my art, even if you're an amazing collector, and I know you're a collector, I cannot pull you in if there's no connection that comes out of it. So just find your tribe. It takes time. I wish there was a button that says, find me the right audience in 10 minutes, but there's no such thing, right? So we just have to keep showing up, being who we are as artists, sharing our love and passion for what we do. I think people are attracted to people that are living their full passion. And I think we all agree with that. You watch a movie, and if the actor is really giving his or her heart into that role, you're attracted to that person, right? So I think for non-artists, which I believe everyone could be a collector, not only the ones that are recognized as collectors. Your neighbor may be a collector. He may not be able to afford a $10,000 painting, but maybe $100 or $50 small sketch, right? So, and that everyone has that potential, and everyone can be part of that community if you show up and you show your enthusiasm, your love for your craft, what you do, whether it's music, art, or poetry, and you share it with the world. I think that's the beginning of community.
That's so beautiful. And I think you've talked a little bit about that in some of your videos about being able to connect with collectors at different levels, and how to bring them in. I just remember that video before
Yeah,
I messaged you
the
about
collector
this.
pyramid, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I just love you to talk about that a little bit because I just find that so inspiring. Like how you go about this idea and what that idea is maybe for others who are out there and how we can be a part of that for others as well.
Right. Yeah. So that's actually a breakfast with Sergio, I think, from last year, where I actually had a board and I drew the whole collector, how to find our collector. It's a pyramid. So you guys can find the whole full explanation on my YouTube and also on my IGTV is how to find our collectors breakfast with Sergio. So, but pretty much the idea is that if you have a pyramid, right? If you draw a pyramid, so and you divide it into 3 sections, at the top of the pyramid is the collectors who are the hardcore collectors, the ones that you read in the magazines, the ones who, they pride themselves on being an art collector, right? And they love to discover artists. They love to be on Instagram. They don't identify themselves maybe as collectors, but they're there. They're looking for art and artists, and there's a joy and passion, right? How do you find those art collectors? Showing up, participating in exhibitions, right? Going to openings, posting in your art on Instagram, etc., right? Going to art fairs and things like that. Participating in the art world and the art community. That's where you find those art collectors at the top of the pyramid. But a lot of times, I remember when I went into art school, everybody talked about being in front of those art collectors, but we forgot about the rest of the pyramid. When you think about it, is the biggest chunk or mass in the pyramid itself. The top is the nice small one and the most shiny one, right? The crown of the pyramid. But so in the mid range, you have what I would call the moderate collector, and the moderate collector is the one who enjoys and loves art. Is not satisfied with a poster at home. They want to have the real thing. So when somebody comes to their home, they proud of their work that's hanging on their wall, because originally they know the artist stories, they know the artist names and things, but they are not on the business of like the top collector, every day thinking about art and looking and having a fascination with that. And as an art dealer in my own gallery, I became to recognize that middle section early on, realizing that there were a lot of people who were buying art for their office. People would come and say, hey, I just opened my office in Chicago. I'm looking for art. So I'm looking for what, depending on what they wanted to have. So that's kind of like the mid-range. After they fulfill that need, that's it, right? They're not continually going to openings and things like that. So that would be like the moderate collector. And then at the bottom of the pyramid, which is the biggest chunk, that's what I would call the casual collector. And that could be anyone. That could be your Uber driver. That could be, the person next door. That could be your friend. That could be another artist too, because we forget that artists also collect art. And, we as artists, we love having art from other artists too. And so that is a huge section of the pyramid that is often forgotten by artists because we are so focused on the ones at the top, right? And we don't give opportunities to people at the bottom of the pyramid to also be part of what you're doing, in your art career. So what you can do for that bottom of the pyramid, and you have different offerings, right? As an artist, the big giant paintings or sculptures or the thing that you do that is the more expensive work, well, it's not going to be for the bottom of the pyramid. They can afford it, or they might not, even if they have the money, they might not value it enough to spend, $10,000 on a work of art. They'd rather spend it on a car, on vacations, or something else, right? So at the bottom of the pyramid, it's more about the relationship that you build with the person on the other side. That might be somebody who's been following you on Instagram for a long time, and they say, well, if I ever buy a work of art, I'm going to buy it from Aaron, because I really love his stuff. And then Aaron one day shows up. He's like, "Hey guys, I just released a new series, and it's a starting point. It's not the big ask, and it's here." And so that person's like, "Well, Aaron just released something that I can afford, that is part of that I want to have of his in my home." And they feel proud of having that small work. Maybe they only spend $100, $200, right? But it was a little thing, and that's something. Now, for fast forward 5, 10 years from now, maybe that person buys the big house. And now that they got the big promotion, the big job, and now like, well, Aaron, remember that that painting that you shared? I really like it now, and I really want it. And because now the relationship is stronger. So that's kind of like, in a nutshell, the collector pyramid that I often talk about. And glad you asked. I didn't know you were going to ask about that. So that's really fun. I always enjoy talking about that because I never thought about that until many years later in my art career, after having my gallery for many years and being a curator. Like, well, there are these different spheres, and how often we only talk about the art collector at the top and we forget everybody else.
Yeah, I just feel like it's so nice the way that you lay these ideas out that you've discovered in your career through your videos, and I just really enjoy, I feel like for a lot of people who follow me, they're also looking for a lot of that information that you provide. And so I appreciate that you've found different ways to build your community. And I really, for me, I enjoy the ideas of like how these networks connect, how do these communities connect together, and how do the different ideas, overlap and are able to be shared across things. Because now it's like the people who follow me are now able to just go up there to the top right here and follow you. And that's exactly. Kind of, and same way, the other way around, but it's
exactly, and also, and sometimes something that inhibits artists from showing up and doing this thing that you and I are doing is because, say, well, Aaron's already doing a video, so Sergio's doing a video, so why would I do another one? Why would anybody watch what I put, right? But, we can all talk about the same things, but the way we say it are different. And some people will connect with you that will just not connect with me, and vice versa, right? Some people, will do the other way around. So I believe there's an audience for everybody. We just have to show up and be patient and be kind, and not be consumed by likes, but rather by the content and just loving what you're doing.
It's so beautiful. And I'd like to talk a little bit, give you a chance here to talk about a little bit about your art yourself. Because I know you talk a lot about the business and the artists and the other artists, and now I'd like to just know a little bit more about you and your work, and
yeah, man, let's do it.
So just anything you want to tell me about your work as I kind of go through.
Yeah, so my work in general, it's about understanding the cycles of life, from when we were born to the day we die, kind of what it means to be a child, what it means to be a teenager, an adult. And, as I get older, now I'm 47, feeling time passing by, it's just been life-changing. So that's kind of my whole inspiration for what I do. And then that takes many shapes and forms, the different things that I work with. So, for example, the painting that you see there, which a lot of my work is tall, vertical. So unfortunately, we only see the middle section. We cannot see the whole figure. But most of my paintings are large size, and usually human size, because the figure like that one is my own shadow or reflection or outline. So that piece, for example, was the first piece I did after the pandemic started. So the pandemic began, here in Chicago, when things closed down, were around March 15 or so. We had just come back from New York. We were there for the Armory show. And then, of course, everything was closing. We got here 2 days later, everything was closed. And so it's crazy. So it was probably about, I don't know, maybe a month in which I didn't do any painting. I was just as confused as everybody else was, trying to figure this whole thing, what to do with the gallery, what to do with my studio and all that. So that was the first painting I did, once the pandemic began. And it's kind of a reflective piece. It's a very dark piece. A lot of my work, has strong color, but that one is subdued, it's quiet. The figure is looking down, it's sensitive. I'm in my hoodie, right? So it's also kind of like this homey I'm just at home chilling out here in the basement, where I have a small studio too. When I cannot go to my other studio, so just kind of like it was a piece that's a cry in the inside, like the heart is crying. There's a little plant that I use often, like these little stencils um, of plants that I really love to use. And so there's a dripping, it's like pulling you down. So it's about that, it's about the heaviness of understanding the world as we know it is not the same, it's different. But at the end of the day, there's light. And if you look at all my work, there's always like some sorts of light, of hope, or of something that at the end of the day, it's like no matter how dark life can get, we're gonna get through this. I'm an eternal optimist, and I hope that also reflects in my work.
Mm.
So that's an older piece. That one is about maybe 5-6 years old. It's called Dreaming in Red, and that one is with my daughter. So it's the figure there of me, looking down. I'm actually sitting. It's hard, you cannot see the top or bottom, but the almost like drippy white paint, that's the silhouette of my daughter. She's behind me, and that's why you see the butterfly there. And it's a painting in which I really wanted to express that, emotion of the presence of a child in one's life. And so this painting kind of embodies that, right? Where there's no words to express how it feels, but to me, this became a visual. And a lot of my work, because of the figure, is about presence of the individual, but at the same time, it's the absence of it. So I have the figure, but there's no eyes, there's no mouth, there's no indicators of identity, just generalization of the universal figure, right? So it's about both things, about being there, but also not being there. And so I like to play with those things in my work a lot and going back and forth. So in this painting, it's about that. It's, my daughter's, emotional connection to me as a father. Okay, that's a good sequence because that's another painting in which my daughter kind of gave me a vision of something I wanted to do. So typically my work is not this kind of doesn't have this level of realism in the water that you see in the back. It's usually more drippy and more abstract in nature, more expressive. Although this one is a really giant piece, the figure is actually a little bit bigger than me. So even the child figure is enlarged. So it's a really big painting. When you look at it up close, you'll be able to see some of the more abstraction, but from far away, as we see it here, which nice that we can see the whole painting. It makes more sense as a pictorial image that we can recognize. So on this one, we were on a trip to Michigan, and on the trip, we stopped by the lake, and my daughter, she walked on the lake, and as she jumped in the lake, created this beautiful reflection and ripples. And I took a snapshot with my phone. Now, typically, as an artist, I don't work from photo reference because, as you saw, some of the other pieces are more abstract and more loose, and things change all the time. But this is one of those very specific times in my trajectory as an artist that I have kind of looked at a photograph, say, I want to kind of adapt the photograph as a really full reference, and then just remove the identity of the figure, because it's not about my daughter, it's about the present, right? The figure. And I just love the composition that naturally came with the camera and created that piece. It's called Walking on Water. And I always wanted to do a painting with that title. And when I said it, like, okay, that's my painting of Walking on Water.
That's so cool. And so do you sell prints like very small of this, and then you sell like the big originals, or is it like only the originals for this kind of thing?
So
can people buy like small prints of them, or is it like only the large paintings that you're putting in your gallery? And I mean, I've seen all these videos in your gallery, so I'm just wondering, like, do you also have like smaller prints that, or like, how does this one, it's different, like when we're this far away versus when we're up close.
Right. So yes, no, that's a great question. I do have prints of some of the work, not of everything. I like to release things on and off. So I may release, let's say, a series of prints of a specific image, which will be reproductions, right, of a larger work, and then that's it. Then I don't print anymore for a while, and then I release another series. I kind of like, instead of having everything available all the time, I kind of like the enthusiasm and the energy of releasing something and making it exciting.
That's really interesting about the excitement and then also like the feeling and how you're able to do that between your art and
Yeah,
then being able to share it.
right,
Um,
right,
and do you feel like that that relationship kind of because you're sharing it also within your communities?
right.
How do you feel like that um, moves through your communities as they feel your works, or do you feel like that affects it as you release a new series or you talk about a new thing? Is that energy flowing through the communities, or do you feel like it could?
I think it's I mean, it depends, right? People who are following and are paying attention, right? They become part of that because I like to bring people along in my journey as an artist, curator, gallery. So I'm always kind of posting and sharing, and so I try to balance things out, right? If you go to my Instagram, you will see maybe Breakfast with Sergio video where I'm talking about our business. The next one is a post of me working on this one in the studio, right? And then the next one maybe a quote, and then again in the studio, right? And then I work over. So I like to kind of have a cohesive brand that people can understand. Oh, okay, he does all these things. He's not just talking about the art business, but he actually makes the art himself too, and he's committed to it, right? That for me is very valuable. Um, so I try to always bring people along the way, in the things that I'm doing. So, for example, when I'm doing a new piece or a new series, like I just released a new series last week, actually, so
Congratulations.
I posted, yeah, a lot of I did a lot of Instagram stories and posts with details, pictures on the studio. So people knew that something was coming. And then I kept saying, save the day, August 26th, new body of work is releasing. And then I did an online virtual show for that. Um, so, uh, and I love that enthusiasm of bringing people along and then say, hey, here it is, right? Now you have it. Because you can lose it really easily on social media if you're just posting for posting, right? But I love storytelling through what you are posting and what we are saying and what we are communicating with the viewers, so those who pay attention can also grasp and say, oh, I want to see what's this going to be, right, on August 26th or whatever.
Right, right. That storytelling. Could you tell me a little bit more about how because you work across these different things from the interviews to the media, the all of these different ways of storytelling. Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
could give us a little bit more in depth into your storytelling process
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and what, maybe some of like the heart of that process.
yeah. So yeah, in the storytelling, it always has to connect with the audience, right? In each platform, there will be different audiences, right? So, for example, to make it kind of a practical, the release of my last series, right? So, I will go on Instagram, and I will talk about the excitement of working on a new series and maybe some things that I was thinking about. To make it super long that people will get you know tired of it, just like small snippets of life, right, as it happens. That's how I think about storytelling. I'm not a storyteller of actually telling you stories of um, of things that I have seen or read or things like that. I'm more of like little snippets of life. That's how I think of storytelling, right? So I would do that on my Instagram, right, post that information, and then I would think, okay, for my this week for my podcast, what would I do? So I'm gonna do a podcast about behind the scenes on preparing for my virtual release, right? So so there's a connection to this whole thing, but the way I talk about it is different because in the podcast I'm talking to artists, right? On Instagram I'm talking to everybody, artists and non-artists, collectors, people who will follow me, and on my podcast is specifically for an art audience. So I'm talking about the things that I'm planning, the things that I'm going to release, and so more of the technical aspect, right? Then I go to my Facebook, and in my Facebook, in my personal page, well, that's my friends, my mom in Mexico, my dad, my cousins, so, and others that know me more closely. So my language might change a little bit. It might be same story, same text, but just I might change the tab, or hey friends, and maybe make it a little bit more chatty on that sense. But trying to keep it all connected and cohesive, so that I'm not going crazy in my mind too, and so that people also, um, can understand me better.
Yeah, that's really intriguing. I think to be able to make the cohesive stories, the cohesive snippets, and how
Yes.
we can relate is, whether we're artists or storytellers, whoever we are, is like, how do we relate and share and create
Right.
in that way without going like
Yeah.
telling
And,
50 stories,
and for
like,
example, that last week I did a breakfast with Sergio episode in which, instead of having a guest or talking about something else, I gave a tour of my virtual show, right? So again, it's all connected to the theme of what I was doing.
that's so awesome. Do you ever go back and like show a show that you've done in the past, and like how does that connect to the present, or how do you bring the
I,
past
I'm
shows
thinking
back?
of doing a little bit of that. I have repeated topics, right? Because a topic that you said before, you're saying new words and it just sounds different, right? So I have repeated topics. Now it's been over 300 episodes. So I have repeated some of that, but I think eventually I'm going to start picking up some little snippets of video from a previous show and then bring it on. I just haven't got the time to go back and watch a whole video and, okay, I'm gonna take this 10 seconds of it.
Wow, that's and 300 episodes. When did you start numbering your series?
I like start from the beginning.
Really? Did
Yeah,
you know that you were like starting? You're like, this is episode 1.
yeah. If you watch the Breath of Sergio episode 1, I probably said episode 1 and episode 2, and yeah, I think there's something about numbers that kind of uh, helps you also celebrate. When you have 10, there's something special about 10, right? So like, yes, I did 10. Okay, maybe I can do 25. Okay, maybe I can do 50. Maybe I can do 75.
Interesting. Yeah, because I've just been thinking about doing that for myself. When I saw you, I'm like, oh, I've actually done a lot of these. Maybe I should. Because I'm keeping track of my own mind, but like I'm not sharing it. So I'm like, oh, that's a clever idea. So,
And I think people then,
mhm.
if somebody comes to you and finds you right now, they say they're watching this video and they're like, oh, I love Aaron, he's doing these things. If they know this is episode 20 or 30, whatever it may be, then like, oh, I know there's 20 more that I haven't watched. So I'm going to go back and find
That's so cool. I might do that.
it.
Thanks for the idea.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's check this out. What's going on here?
So this was called Vulnerable Man, and it's an older piece. For sure, you cannot see the head or the feet, but it's about the fragility of the male, right? The male figure. And you can see that inside the figure, which is again my silhouette, there's a nest and there's 2 eggs. How something more fragile than, eggs, right? Bird eggs and a nest. And of course, that has also symbolism to fertility and all those things. So it's about the fragility of that, how we may feel that we are strong, but at the same time, we're vulnerable. And I think, after the pandemic, I think we can all attest to that, right? It affected everybody in some way or fashion. So that's kind of that painting's about, recognizing my own vulnerability and my own, weakness, and just something that could be a tornado that just passes by, destroys what has been built for 20-30 years, and it's gone in 3 minutes or less, right? So it's about that, the fragility of ourselves.
How do you go about kind of researching some of these symbols that are in your work?
Sketching, I love to sketch, and so I sketch, like, the nest is a recurring figure in my work. I've been, looking at that as a symbol in various ways. So the nest, for sure. hands. I have the circle. There's the bird, the butterfly, the flower, plant motifs. That's kind of like, as you grow as an artist, you keep adding to your repertoire or collection of imagery that you adapt for yourself that means something to you, and sometimes it keeps coming back.
Mm.
All right, that one's called Vertigo, and that one's actually, sometimes art comes from painful moments, right? Sometimes it could come from good places, and sometimes from bad experiences. This one, I did this piece, let's see, about 14 years ago. One day I was driving and all of a sudden everything started spinning, and turned out that I started having vertigo episodes every week, which would debilitate me for like 2-3 days. Couldn't get out of the house. So it was a really rough period of maybe about 6 months in which I went through all these recurring vertigo episodes. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't make art. I couldn't drive. I had to be home, and it was just bad. So this is the first painting that came out of that, experience of having vertigo, and it's called Vertigo. So there's a central figure that's symmetric, right? The dark figure that's standing, and then there's this other kind of like ghost-like figure in motion, and then that red line that's kind of all over the place. That's how it felt for me, right? Not being able to stand and to realize that, wow, standing up is something that is controlled inside your inner ear, and how something so minute can make you feel like you are floating in space, and so bad. So, and I really, this painting came out of that, and I did the painting, and like 2 months later it sold. So I never thought somebody would buy my vertigo painting, and collector saw it, loved it, and purchased it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's so interesting how like out of the pain, then someone like connects to that in their own ways.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And we all kind of like, it's like, oh, like how that came about.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes in the most unexpected moments. Like right now for COVID, I have seen so many artists doing work that has come out of this season, and I think it's important work.
Very, very important. I actually just curated a whole group of work, photographers, that like came out of this. It was like 15 photographers, all like work that was about this.
Yeah.
And so some of it is pretty intense.
Yeah, and it documents our life. 50 years from now, somebody might be looking at archives of that show, looking at what it was like, to be in this pandemic time. All right, that one's called Tierra, which means earth. And this is a series of paintings of looking at the elements, fire, air, water, earth. So this one is earth. So it's the human figure, is the male figure underground, but also floating in space. This one has a lot of texture, actually, really heavy build-up texture. I don't think I mentioned it, but I work on paper, and then I adhere the paper to canvas. So usually it's nice and smooth. On this one, the paper is wrinkled. So I really wanted to give it that rough, earthly, tactical, quality of the work. And the reason I love paper is, one, I don't know, I've always been in love with the surface paper, the way it absorbs the paint. I work on acrylic, and also because it's fragile. And again, when I think about my work, and it's about cycles of life and about the non-permanency of life, I think the material is also related to how I think, right? It's fragile, it's sensitive to the touch, things like that.
And how do you adhere the paper to the canvas?
So I simply use acrylic gel medium. So acrylic gel medium, I buy heavy weight paper, acrylic gel medium, and a lot of pressure and rolling for a long time to put all the bubbles out. And I've been doing it now for 18 years, so I got a pretty good system and a pretty good kind of way of working. And I actually have a couple of videos also on YouTube on how I do it.
Really? And how does that roll up? Like if you want to roll up the canvas?
So what's nice about, and actually here, for example, I have,
Yeah.
they come like this, right, by the big giant rolls,
Oh
and then
wow.
I adhere it to the canvas. So what's nice about it is that uh, it just works great. The memory of the paper and the gesso canvas after it's being glued, when I show it on an exhibition, is beautifully flat. See, if you take a sheet of paper and you put it on a wall, it's going to have the memory, right? And it's a pain, as you know, to unroll it and then roll it back up. When it's adhered to canvas, when you hang it on a wall, it will have just a bit of memory. In a few hours, it will be beautifully flat. And then when
Hmm.
you're ready to ship it again or send it to whatever, you can roll it, about this much. You don't want to do it too tight, about this much, and then you can ship it anywhere. And that's how I've been able to ship my work around the world, to different shows, because I can just buy a big white tube, put as many pieces as they need, and it can go very inexpensively as well. And of course,
Like
I
a
love that
tube.
fragility. Mm-hmm.
Like a tube, like a big tube.
Yeah, like you go to the hardware store, they have those big tubes that they use for, I guess when they do cement
Concrete.
columns. Yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and they have it in different sizes, 10 inches, 12 inches. So I have the various sizes depending how many pieces I need to ship. And then I just
Cool.
make my own lid. And yeah.
Nice. Nice. How do you make the lid? I'm just curious because I've used those before in a project, and I'm just like curious. It's
Yeah.
just like it's
And,
an interesting idea. It's an interesting concept to use
and
those.
yeah, and thanks guys for the comments too. I see some comments there.
Oh yeah, feel free to respond to anything. I didn't see any. I haven't seen any particular questions, but if there are
Right.
any particular
It's
questions,
just
feel
like,
free.
hearts or highs and things like that. So
Yeah, yeah.
thanks guys.
I know
Um,
Henrietta and Mimi and 9 bars of gold. Thank you.
yeah. So what I what I like to do is I use cardboard, and then I just kind of cut the cardboard and put like 2 layers of it, and then just tape it really, really strongly with just shipper's tape, and that's it.
Oh, cool. Hey, are you by any chance in your studio? Are,
No, so right now I'm in my video, space. I have a small studio over there that's like in the basement where
oh
when
yeah.
I'm at home that I can make work. My other studio is, so my gallery has two spaces, one which is the gallery space and one is the studio space. So that's where I do most of the large pieces. Now, of course, now with the pandemic, I've been spending a lot of time at home. So here in the basement, I can also get some work done. But I
Very
don't
cool.
have, unfortunately, here at home, I don't have like natural light. I have to rely on lamps and stuff like that. But I can still make work.
Well, I just wanted to give you the opportunity if you wanted to show us around at all, but that's up to you, or we'll go
Yeah,
through.
yeah, it's a little messy.
That's up, I mean, either way, either way. I wanted to give you the opportunity here.
Nah, I think we'll pass on this one.
All
Yeah,
right, perfect. Next
yeah,
time
yeah.
we'll be
Because
at the gallery
I
space.
just finished the other series. Right now it's yeah, it has stuff everywhere.
I
But
understand.
you can see in some of my videos. I'm sometimes in my studio, so you can check those out too.
What's going on here?
Okay, so that one is a picture referencing my son when he became a teenager, right? Um, and there's his silhouette, and of course we only see in this middle section. Then there's a barbed wire, and then there's a bird. I don't know if you can see it in the picture there, but so symbolically is this like the barbed wires that separates this teenage age boy from the world that's ahead, right, from adulthood. So it's like waiting for his own time, to wanting to cross the barbed wire and fly on his own wings, kind of thing. That's kind of the symbolism of the barbed wire on that. Mm-hmm. And artists, let's see, artist is asking,
Yeah, Henrietta.
how does one find one's collectors? Well, you want to rewind to this video because we talked about that already in the collector pyramid. So make sure that you check it out from the beginning after we're done here.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you have a whole YouTube video or two
Yeah,
about
a
this,
few.
right?
Right,
Where you
right.
go more in depth. I just really appreciate that you shared a little bit of your like new a little bit of like a new way to like say it succinctly
Yeah,
here, because
that
then your video you like really go into it.
that was fun.
Yeah. What's
So
going
on that
on here?
that piece is called Spirit Rises. It was one of the very first works that was from probably about 20 years old painting. That's in the museum, the collection of the National Museum of Mexican Art, and that painting, which you cannot see the whole thing, but it's a ghostly figure, and it's one of the first paintings where I started using the figure in full size in that format, which is about 42 inches wide, about 72 inches tall, and um, leaving, as you can see, there's like a white edge all around. That's part of the artwork. It's always like 2 inches in those pieces that are the paper canvas pieces. And I like the size because it's like a door. So it fits one person in. Usually when you think about a door, only one person goes at a time, right? So it's kind of like the same thing. So it's like almost like each painting is like you opening a door to see who's on the other side. You're observing the other realm, and the other realm is observing you, and you're face to face with that. Now on this one, it's one of the early pieces that you might see like a grid. That's because on this one I use a smaller sheets of paper that I glued to the canvas in a grid format. I think we're 8 by 10 or 8.5 by 11, something like that. And that, the whole painting is like a mosaic of those of that grid. And so the figure kind of breaks the grid. It's very loose and drippy, and it's just about the essence, right? The quick presence, fleeting moment of the figure.
Well, did you create the grid first, or did you kind of like paint it? Like, how did you go about that process here because of the grid?
Yeah. So the first was step one was to prime the canvas, pin it to the wall, usually staple it to the wall in the studio. So I don't work on easel, but right on the wall. And then after that, gesso it, and then glue the paper, gesso the paper. So now that I have the grid, and then start the painting process. And most of my paintings start as charcoal drawings first. So there's a lot of charcoal, a lot in the underneath layers that you might see sometimes sneaking in and out. And yeah, and then at the end, sometimes I may varnish it, or sometimes I may not.
Interesting. And how are you going about like so you're like sketching a lot. I mean, you said that you were sketching a lot. Right?
Mm-hmm.
How are you incorporating like the sketches and the symbols and what's that process like leading up to
Yeah.
this?
So the sketches are usually kind of for my own understanding. Um, let's say I might sketch, for example, the nest, right? And I might look at a picture of a nest with 2 or 3 eggs, and I might sketch it out, and that's it. So then when I'm doing a painting, I might reference, the idea on some of those sketches, and sometimes not. And there have been also sketches that have become finished pieces too. It's more kind of like mental material, preparatory ideas, but not necessarily sketching out the work as it's going to be. Is more of kind of learning
Yeah.
based.
Could you talk about a little bit about that learning process? A little bit more like what that kind of back and forth and
Yeah,
maybe are there references? Are you looking at something? Are you listening?
it's a little
What
bit of everything. I think
hmm
learning is multi-sensory, right? Learning with materials. I like to because in my paintings, I like the tactical part of it. That's why I love charcoal, because I can touch it. The paint, I use brushes and I use tools, and so learning is kind of looking at tools and materials and see what they can do, how I can use them, collect them in the studio, and some things I might use, some things I might keep them for a long time and then throw them away because they didn't do anything, and also looking, sketching, listening as well. But for example, um, I'm always looking for new ways of creating textures, right? Surface textures. So about maybe a couple of years ago, when you buy an iPhone, the old one, well, you just kind of keep it or maybe give it to your younger sibling or whatever, right? So I started keeping my older iPhones. I have version 1 and 2, really old ones. If you remember, the old one was almost like an eggshell, like it was very round. It had no hard edges anywhere. It was round everywhere. So I saved it, and I thought one day I pulled it out from my drawer and where I keep stuff, and like I wondered, if I can do mark making with this because it has no hard edges. And I started, rubbing with it. And actually, I did a whole series of paintings, where I use the iPhone to rub against. And now it's been one of the tools that I use a lot. Even in my last series, I use a little bit of that because the mark making it makes is so different to any other material I have used because of the quality of, I mean, it doesn't matter what, it's just the quality of that object that has all these round edges. So that's part of the learning, looking at things, collecting, and see what they are capable of.
That's so cool. We have a couple questions here.
Yeah,
Let's go through these really quickly because we have about 6 minutes left.
awesome.
So, Henrietta loves the symbolism. Karma asks, what type of paper do you use?
I use Stonehenge is my favorite. Stonehenge is printmaking paper, which I love. Can buy in the roll, and sometimes I also love this paper, which is a mixed media paper that I get from Blix.com. BlixArtSupplies.com. If you check mixed media paper, I think it's 300 grams. I don't remember exactly because I don't have the label in front of me. I already have it in my favorites. I just go and click, and it comes at the door. But it's called mixed media paper, so it's really heavy, and I like that.
Excellent.
But Stonehenge is my all-time favorite paper.
Nice. So Marco says, based on your kind of work, with meaningful and powerful, how do you stay focused on the task while making it? Do you have any techniques? Yeah, I think that's basically the question. Like, do you have any techniques to stay focused with the meaningfulness and power and balancing that?
Yeah, well, I think art making is always a conversation between the artist and the work, kind of understanding. It's always about giving and receiving, right? So you approach, the most difficult part is the first stage, right? You approach a work of art, which is an empty canvas or an empty paper or a piece of material that you want to form into something, right? So those first kind of stages in the art making process, you're giving. And then there comes a point in which you have to wait and let it give you back, and like pull back, let it speak back to you. What else does it need? What else is lacking? What are you losing the message? What you're trying to say? It can happen that you get too carried away with the technique that you then forget about the message or the ideas that you want to portray. So kind of balancing the two, like, sometimes you get a new color, you're so excited to use it that you overdo it, right? And so as an artist is giving, and then giving yourself also time to receive what does the work has to tell you. And a lot of times that can happen by you work in the studio, you get to a point in which you say, okay, I'm going to leave it like this, and I'm going to leave for the weekend and not walk in my studio. So when I come back on Monday, I see it fresh with fresh eyes, or turn it around, right? So you only see the back of the painting for a week, and then sit down with a cup of coffee or tea and turn it around and critique yourself. Say, okay, what is it saying, right? What is trying to tell me that I can bring it back to the place that needs to go.
That's a wonderful way to explore and to come back. That's
yeah,
so
because I think because social media, right now we are all as artists kind of like with this thing, like, oh, I have to post it in social media, I have to do something in social media. So sometimes we feel like we need to rush things because social media is waiting, but then there's no such thing as that. Nobody's taking notes about everything we're posting, right? So give yourself time for things to happen and to grow as they need to.
That's wonderful advice from someone who posts a lot and has a lot of media going out there. So
Yeah, there's a lot
that's
of things I
super
haven't
important.
posted. Yeah, yeah. And I always say, don't be afraid to post an older work. Just because it's old doesn't mean that it's not good. It might be old to you, but brand new to the person who just started following you yesterday.
Right. So Henrietta was saying it sounds like a memory. You're very tactile with your art.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering about like how you play around with that. Like you're coming back from your tea or whatever it is, and like you're like, oh, there's like a memory. Like I don't know. Do you ever like play with that? Like something you just experienced and it like brings you to that?
I think so. I think memory plays a big role, yeah, on my work for sure. More than anything, the experiences of things, and trying to encapsulate that experience into the work, and then see how is that going to materialize, right? So an experience, something that you feel that inside, but how does that become visual? And once it's there, it may make sense to me in one way, but you might read it completely different, and that's okay. Being okay with that too, interpretation of the viewer.
The interpretation of the viewer. I like that. I like that. So we only have about maybe 2-3 minutes left. So I just want to give you an opportunity to say anything that inspiration that you'd like, or anything that you didn't say this hour that you'd like to share.
Well, I think I just want to say, first of all, thanks so much, man, for having me here. I think it's awesome what you're doing here, and we need to be doing more of those things. Thank you for everyone who's joining us here live, and for those who will be watching it later. I truly appreciate you, and thank you for your comments, your questions as well. And stick around. Also Aaron, message me. We'd love to hear from you as well. That's what community is about, right? Being making ourselves accessible to people and to our community. And just one thing I'm always saying, everybody, just show up. You show up as you are. You don't have to be like Aaron or like me or like anybody else. Just be yourself. You may be an introvert, and one way of showing up is with your hands, right? Maybe do videos where you're just showing your hands at work, and that's fine. That's a way of showing up. Just find your way of showing up and do it on a consistent basis, and that will make a huge difference in your career.
That's so beautiful. And I think the other thing is showing up and how do you connect? I have a lot of questions about how to connect as an introvert. People ask that, like, and do you have any suggestions, especially like artists who are trying to show up and are introverted, that connection?
Yeah, exactly. And that thing, for example, that's like the example of show up with your hands, or also something that right now on Instagram, the Instagram Reels is really fun. It's a great way to show up. Like I've been teaching a lot of artists to use Instagram Reels, to kind of bring us really up close into their art and let people see the details of your work or your process. And that's great. It's 15 seconds that you can record with your phone, and becomes like a little mini movie set. And you don't have to say anything because you can pick a song from the Reels, the Instagram, music library. So like TikTok, right? But kind of made for Instagram. So you just gotta find your way of showing up that is true to you, that you're comfortable with, and you don't have to be like somebody else. I'm an immigrant, so my first language is Espanol, right? Spanish. So at first I was afraid, like when I started doing my videos, I have an accent. When I did my podcast, people are gonna are they going to understand? Sometimes I mispronounce a word. Sometimes the verb comes in the past tense, supposed to be in the present. Things like that happen. But I realized, what? This is who I am. That's how I speak, and it is what it is. So when I accepted my own self-awareness, then I was okay with it.
Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you, Sergio. Thank you, all the people watching. I'm Aaron Jack. I'm at Aaron Jack Line Art. You can check out more of these. I do them usually about once a week. So thank you so much. They can find you at Sergio Gomez Art, right? And then you have a YouTube video and all kinds of things. Video, podcast, everything. So thank you, Sergio. Thank you, everybody watching. I'll see you all soon. Send us a
Thanks,
message.
man. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.
Take care.